Lazarus' story began long before his first breath. His Aunt Caroline, desperate for power and belonging, had pledged herself to the Circle of Divine Rebirth, a secretive occultic sect that promised transformation and influence through spiritual manipulation. My man, this occultic people would promise you wealth, power and recognition. There's no place where you would go and leave unnoticed. Which made them give these occultic members titles and leadership roles to be able to control, lead and confuse a lot of people at the same time, in the name of followers, role models and leadership. Caroline, on the other hand, was lacking a decent sacrifice which would make the deacon satisfied enough to offer her those kind of leadership roles in the community or social media. When Lena announced her pregnancy, Caroline saw an opportunity to submit the child to their occultic church to patch the gap she was missing for her to become powerful. Master, I have found the right sacrifice for the delayed ritual. Bloodline, we are one, he is my sister's child. The same sister that I have failed to instill madness for me to be able to get my wealth. You are getting wiser by the day, Caroline, said Father Elias, the master of the sect. It is a boy, he is a blank slate. We will mold him, shape him, and he will be our vessel. Through him, our ideals will flourish in a new generation. Caroline, blinded by the promises of the occult, couldn't wait for the transformation, not caring about the destiny of Lazarus. Over the course of Lena's pregnancy, Caroline performed rituals in secret, binding the unborn Lazarus soul to the circle. These rituals were subtle yet powerful, designed to influence his personality, desires, and destiny from the womb. From the moment Aaron was born, he was unlike other children. His piercing blue eyes seemed to carry an unspoken depth, and even as a baby, his presence commanded attention. Lena adored her son's uniqueness, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something unusual about him. It didn't take long for Lena's marriage to start crumbling, and her husband filed for divorce, which made Lena's life miserable without her husband care, love and support that she was used to. Make things worse, he announced a business opportunity at another country just after the divorce and left the country and his fatherly responsibility to raise his child. He just packed, left and never called again. As a toddler, Lazarus began to exhibit behaviors that set him apart. The struggle started becoming worse for Lena, that she had to rely on Caroline's help and handouts for survival. Caroline would buy Lazarus a bit of clothes here and there and offer Lena some of her old clothes from time to time. When Lena tries to look for a job, she would only find underpaying jobs but still loses them within 2 months without proper reasons. The manager would accuse her of stealing or incompetence. This whole situation made it very easy for Caroline to draw her sister Lena close to her so she could destroy both of them, mother and child, and change their destinies. When Lazarus was 4 years old, he developed a certain behavior that is outside his expected normal state, leaving everyone puzzled. While other boys in the neighborhood raced toy cars and built forts, Lazarus was drawn to activities like arranging flowers, creating elaborate dress-up scenarios, and choreographing Little Princess performances. He had an uncanny ability to match colors and pick out fabrics, often choosing his outfits with an artistic eye. You should wear this today, Mommy, he'd say, holding up one of Lena's scarves. From an early age, Lazarus's behavior reflected the influence of the circle of divine renewal, manifesting in subtle yet unmistakable ways. His actions were guided by the spiritual energy tethered to him, shaping his mannerisms, preferences, and personality in ways that defied societal norms for a boy child. While other boys played with action figures, Lazarus preferred dolls and dress-up kits. He spent hours brushing their hair, styling their clothes, and creating elaborate stories centered around themes of beauty and glamour. Lazarus loved pretending to cook, often wearing his mother's apron and imitating her movements. He would host tea parties with his stuffed animals, arranging everything meticulously and taking on the role of a gracious hostess. Lazarus became vocal about what he wanted to wear, while his parents tried to dress him in traditional boys' clothing. He often accessorized with scarves, necklaces, or even glittery stickers he carried in his pockets. While at school, Lazarus would always gravitate towards girls, preferring their company to that of boys. He joined them in activities like hopscotch, singing games, and pretend play, often taking on traditionally female roles in their stories. He went as far as shortening his name to Laz, making it sound like a girl's name. Kids at school started calling him Laz, and he would be blushing and playing with his eyelashes before answering or attending to them. During family outings, Lazarus often admired displays of makeup and beauty products. On one occasion, he insisted on trying a lip gloss sample at a department store, earning amused smiles from the staff and awkward glances from his uncle Victor, who is Lazarus' uncle from Lena's father's side. Caroline found Lazarus's behavior endearing and attributed it to his creative and imaginative nature. She knew it was time, and you would not believe me if I tell you that during school holidays, she would come with her fancy cars and pick up Lazarus for a visit at her beach house mansion. She would sponsor the gay lifestyle by offering him her expensive makeup kit to play with and often let him play at her dressing room, and this made Lazarus very happy and to be very fond of Aunt Caroline. She would tell him not to tell anyone, as they are not going to accept that and they'll be very angry with him. Caroline would carefully watch Lazarus' behavior as she portrays different female objects all over the house, sometimes even went as far as taking pictures of Lazarus wearing her clothes, makeup, hair and shoes. Caroline became Lazarus's favorite and closest aunt. You must be wondering where Caroline's own kids were and what they were thinking about this whole situation. Caroline did not have kids. What happened is that when she first joined the cult, she was supposed to sacrifice her own womb in exchange for power and wealth. But her master revealed that her womb was already dead due to the ongoing abortions that she had done during her days at the college. They then chose that Lena goes mad, but it became a very difficult task as uncle Victor was constantly praying for Lena, who was seriously getting setbacks and failures at the moment. But to God's grace she broke loose of those demons and got married to a good and loving businessman who happens to be Lazarus's father, who later divorced her and moved to another country. Due to the cult activities and greed practices, they spiritually arranged the whole thing. They really wanted to use Lena as a sacrifice until she got pregnant, and they used her son instead, by stealing his destiny, as they want to compete with God by ruling and taking over the world instead. When holiday came to an end, Lazarus went back home and found Uncle Victor there, as he always visited whenever he got a chance to. Victor started growing increasingly uneasy. He worried about how Lazarus's actions would be perceived by others, and struggled to reconcile his behavior with societal expectations, but he would sometimes remember him in his prayers. He lived at another province but visited sometimes. Ever since his older brother, who was Lena's father, passed away, he kept maintaining that relationship through Lena, as she was a complete physical reminder of him. Besides, she seemed to be the only who was kind and still cared about their father's side ever since he passed away. The rest moved on and didn't want to be bothered, including Lena's mother, and that did not sit well with him. The occultic church people continued to disturb the people of God and focused on stealing their destinies in exchange for power and wealth. While they were busy like that and deceiving people, came along a certain young man around the age of 25. He came from a middle-class family where both his parents were teachers. His parents introduced him and his siblings to a luxury and better lifestyle, compared to a lot of what other kids were getting. His name was Sombai. When he grew up, he was struggling to get a better job or to start a successful business as other young men of his age. He would try this and that, but with no success. He wanted to marry a wife, have a fancy wedding, kids, and offer his family a fancy lifestyle, as he was well aware of that kind of luxury from his parents. This whole drama and struggle led him to the door of the Circle of Divine Rebirth occultic church. through someone who promised he would get help. The very same occultic church as the one Caroline is serving. As time went by, they changed and started promising him the whole world, and he gladly accepted so he could maintain the same lifestyle he was already used to and not look like a failure. Through a combination of business connections, financial investment, and spiritual occultic influence, Sombai would find himself in the right places at the right times. The occultic group promised him the power to influence people, to become a leader who could shape opinions and even guide the masses, both in physically and also on social media networks. He was going to be a role model to a lot of young ambitious boys all over the world. Young boys would tremble against each other at the night clubs and parties. It's him as they bump at each other wanting to take pictures with him so they could post on social media. Sombai, though initially unsure about the nature of the group, saw the potential for a life of unparalleled success. He agreed to join, but he had no idea the price he would pay. Sombai was initiated into the group with a grand ceremony. He was told that his new purpose was to be a symbol of the church's ideals, a figure who could inspire others to embrace their true selves and pursue their desires without fear. However, the truth was that the church had a hidden agenda. They wanted Sombai to be the face of a new narrative, one that glorified being gay and made it seem like a path to power, wealth, and prestige. They believed that by manipulating Sombai into embracing and promoting this narrative, they could recruit more young men to their cause, men who would eventually join the group and become part of the occultic system. Sombai was instructed to embrace the role of a glamorous gay figure, even though, in his heart, he had never been attracted to men. He was ordered not to sleep with women ever again, but only men, otherwise there'll be consequences, said the master of the Circle of Divine Truth. The church provided him with everything he needed to live the life of a highly successful and influential gay man. They gave him a stylish persona through branding and media connections. They transformed Sombai into a fashion-forward, charismatic figure, placing him on the covers of magazines and in the spotlight of various social events. The occultic group showered Sombai with expensive gifts, designer clothes, and luxury experiences, all designed to reinforce the idea that his new lifestyle was the key to success. They offered him publicity and popularity through strategic PR campaigns and media manipulation. They made Sombai a beloved figure in the public eye. He was invited to exclusive parties, became a sought-after influencer, and garnered attention for his unique identity as a gay man who had it all. Sombai was carefully groomed to be a role model to other young men, especially those who were impressionable and searching for a way to belong or gain influence. The church's members made sure that Sombai was portrayed as someone who had discovered the freedom and empowerment of living authentically as a gay man. He was featured in interviews where he spoke about embracing his true self, about how his life had been transformed through his newfound identity, and about the liberation he had experienced by following his desires. This created an image of Sombai as the ideal gay man, someone who was bold, successful, and unapologetic. Sombai was encouraged to glamorize his lifestyle in a way that made being gay seem like the ultimate form of success and power. He was told to promote gay glamour by attending high-profile events with other influential gay figures, wear bold, fashionable attire, and embrace a lavish lifestyle. The ultimate goal was for Sombai to influence young men who were struggling with their identities, making them feel as though being gay and joining the occultic group was the ticket to a glamorous life of fame, wealth, and acceptance. While these whole shenanigans and drama was going on, Lazarus was also watching and following Sombai on social media. He was very impressed by him and the lifestyle he was portraying. One cold night, Lena had a vivid and chilling dream that unraveled the dark secrets of her family's past. It began with her walking through a grand but foreboding cathedral that glowed with an unnatural light. The space was filled with haunting, ethereal music, and the air seemed heavy with an oppressive energy. In the center of the cathedral, she saw her son, Lazarus, dressed in ornate white and gold robes, surrounded by robed figures chanting in unison. His expression was calm but vacant, his eyes glowing faintly as if he were under a spell. He was holding a gilded staff adorned with strange symbols. Symbols Lena didn't recognize but instinctively knew were ancient and powerful. As Lena moved closer, she recognized one of the robed figures standing beside Lazarus, her sister, Caroline. Caroline's face was lit with an unsettling smile, and she held a golden chalice, offering it to Lazarus. The priest overseeing the ceremony spoke in a booming voice. Lazarus, the chosen vessel, the light of the circle, bound by his destiny to us. Caroline seemed almost euphoric, nodding in agreement. Lena called out to her sister, but Caroline didn't respond, as though she couldn't hear her. Suddenly, Lena's surroundings shifted. The cathedral faded into darkness, replaced by an eerie void filled with shadowy figures. A voice echoed around her, deep and resonant. It is not just Caroline. The roots run deeper than you know. Lena's vision sharpened, and she saw a new scene, her mother, years younger, standing in a dimly lit room surrounded by candles and strange symbols. She was performing a ritual with her sister Caroline and two of Lena's aunts. They chanted in a language Lena didn't understand, their faces stern and focused. The voice explained that Lena's family had been tied to the circle of divine renewal 4 generations. Her mother had been recruited as a young woman and had slowly brought other family members into the fold, including Caroline and some of her cousins. Over time, this occultic group expanded its influence, not just spiritually but by controlling and manipulating the unaware members of the family. Lena saw horrifying glimpses of the group's abuse of her family. Members of the occultic group used fear and psychological manipulation to suppress dissent among the family. They would perform subtle rituals to curse or harm those who didn't align with their agenda, ensuring silence and compliance. The cult had long preyed on the spiritual energy of those unaware of its existence. Lazarus was just the latest victim, but he wasn't the first. Lena saw visions of family members who had mysteriously fallen ill, faced unexplainable tragedies, or suffered from mental instability, all orchestrated by the cult to maintain their power. Lena's mother and aunts had been targeting the younger generation for years, indoctrinating them subtly through gifts, rituals disguised as family traditions, and whispered promises of special destinies. As the vision ended, Lena found herself back in the cathedral, standing face to face with her son. Lazarus looked at her with tears in his glowing eyes and whispered, "Save me, Mama." The figures around him turned to Lena, their faces obscured by shadows. Among them, she spotted not just Caroline, but also her mother, aunts, and even a few cousins she hadn't seen in years. Caroline's master stepped forward, pointing directly at Lena. "You were supposed to join us, Lena, but you turned your back. Now, your son belongs to us." Lena woke up in a cold sweat, trembling with fear and anger. She immediately realized that the dream wasn't just a nightmare but a revelation. Everything began to make sense. The strange behaviors of certain family members, the unexplainable tragedies, and Lazarus's peculiar actions. She felt a wave of guilt and horror, knowing her family had been part of this dark legacy for so long. But she also felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just about Lazarus anymore. It was about breaking a generational curse and protecting her family from the clutches of the occultic group. Lena began secretly investigating her family's history, piecing together evidence of the group's influence. She searched for journals, photos, and any other clues that could validate her dream. Lena became more vigilant, limiting Lazarus's interactions with Caroline and other suspicious family members. She also started looking into spiritual ways to counter the influence of the circle of divine renewal. Armed with her findings, Lena prepared to confront Caroline and her mother, determined to uncover the full extent of their involvement and put an end to the cycle of manipulations. The occultic family members, deeply entrenched in the spiritual doctrines of the circle of divine renewal, wielded their spiritual influence not just for power but also to control and suppress other family members who were unaware of their operations. Their aim was to keep the non-initiated in a state of perpetual dependency, weakness, and despair. The occultic members would perform rituals to ensure the financial ruin of unsuspecting family members. They would curse businesses, jobs, or opportunities, causing failures that seemed coincidental but were orchestrated spiritually. A family member starting a small business would suddenly face inexplicable losses or legal issues. Promising job offers would fall through at the last moment without clear reasons. Through rituals, they created spiritual blockages that prevented the unaware from ever accumulating wealth. Family members would find themselves constantly in debt, unable to save money, or losing what little they had to accidents or emergencies. Occultic members would lend money to struggling relatives, knowing they could never repay it. This created a cycle of dependency and humiliation, further weakening their resolve and self-esteem. The occultic members used gossip, lies, and manipulation to destroy the reputation of others. By spreading false stories, they ensured that the targeted family members were alienated from friends and community support. They would whisper rumors of theft, infidelity, or dishonesty, ensuring that even close friends and allies turned away. The occultic group would spiritually manipulate the emotions of others around the unaware family member. This could lead to constant arguments with friends, misunderstandings, and a growing sense of loneliness. Blocking new connections through rituals, they ensured that their targets could not form meaningful new relationships. Friendships and partnerships would mysteriously fall apart, leaving the individual socially stranded. The occultic members would target the marriages of unsuspecting relatives to create constant conflict. They used rituals to sow distrust, anger, and resentment between spouses. A loving couple would suddenly find themselves fighting over trivial matters. One spouse might develop feelings of inexplicable dissatisfaction or suspicion toward the other. Spiritual manipulation could lead one spouse to engage in infidelity, often without fully understanding why. This betrayal would lead to the collapse of trust and the eventual breakdown of the marriage. For couples hoping to have children, the occultic members performed rituals to block fertility, causing unexplained miscarriages or an inability to conceive. This often led to immense emotional strain, further damaging the relationship. The occultic members performed rituals known to them to ensure that targeted relatives never owned land, homes, or other valuable assets. Deals would fall through, or properties would be lost due to inexplicable legal or financial troubles. For younger family members, the group would block educational success, ensuring they couldn't achieve the skills needed for upward mobility. Children would struggle with unexplained learning difficulties. Promising careers would stagnate due to a lack of opportunities or mysterious setbacks. The ultimate goal was to keep the non-initiated family members dependent on the occultic members for survival. By controlling access to resources and creating an environment of scarcity, the group maintained their domination. The group would perform rituals to siphon spiritual energy from their unaware relatives. This left their targets feeling constantly fatigued, unmotivated, and depressed. The targeted family members often experienced vivid nightmares or unsettling dreams, further destabilizing their mental health. They might see symbols, shadows, or even hear voices that made them question their sanity. Rituals were used to induce mysterious illnesses or chronic conditions in the unaware family members. This drained their finances and left them too weak to fight back or question their circumstances. The occultic family members' ultimate aim was to keep the unaware relatives in a state of spiritual, emotional, and financial bondage. By ensuring their poverty and misery, the cult not only maintained its own power but also created a stark divide between those in the know and those left to suffer. This dynamic made it easier for the group to recruit new members from a place of desperation, while eliminating potential threats from those who might resist or expose them. After her vivid dream and subsequent discoveries about the occultic activities in her family, Lena became determined to warn the non-initiated relatives about the sinister forces controlling their lives. However, her efforts met with resistance and skepticism. When Lena approached her relatives, they either laughed off her warnings or dismissed them as paranoia. Some even accused her of trying to sow discord in the family. "You've been watching too many horror movies," one cousin scoffed. Others felt it was impossible that their own family members, especially Caroline or Lena's mother, could be involved in anything so dark. A few relatives, however, showed signs of unease. They had noticed strange patterns in their lives, unexplainable misfortunes, failed ventures, and strained relationships, but fear kept them from probing further. As Lena grew more vocal, the initiated family members worked to discredit her. They whispered among the others, calling her unstable and accusing her of being the true source of the family's problems. In her frustration, Lena reached out to a relative on her father's side of the family, someone distanced from the occultic influence. Uncle Victor was a perceptive and spiritually grounded man who had long suspected something was amiss in Lena's maternal lineage during his visits. Uncle Victor quietly observed the family dynamics. He noticed the stark contrast between the prosperity of the initiated members and the struggles of those who seemed unaware. He started digging into family history, uncovering records of unexplained tragedies, broken marriages, and sudden financial losses that seemed to disproportionately affect specific members. Being a devout Christian, Uncle Victor prayed fervently for guidance and discernment. He began experiencing revelations, visions, and impressions that confirmed Lena's claims and approached Lena privately, acknowledging the truth of her warnings. Together, they began to strategize on how to break the family's bondage. Uncle Victor also introduced Lena to his pastor, a seasoned spiritual leader known for addressing deep-rooted generational curses and occultic oppression. The pastor, Reverend Joseph, agreed to help after hearing Lena's story and confirming her experiences through prayer, spiritual warfare through prayer and fasting. Reverend Joseph led Lena, Uncle Victor, and a small group of trusted individuals in an intensive period of prayer and fasting, breaking the curses placed on the unaware family members. During this time, Lena experienced dreams and visions that provided more clarity on the occultic group's tactics and weak points. With Uncle Victor's support, Lena confronted Caroline, her mother, and other suspected occultic family members. Armed with evidence and spiritual backing, she exposed their actions in front of other relatives. Caroline initially denied the accusations, but when pressed, her facade began to crack. Uncle Victor's calm but firm questioning revealed inconsistencies in her responses. Lena's mother, unable to withstand the pressure, finally admitted her involvement. She revealed how she had been recruited as a young woman and how she had slowly drawn others into the fold, including Caroline, her two sisters, and some of their kids. Reverend Joseph conducted a series of deliverance services for Lena, Uncle Victor, and the non-initiated family members who were willing to participate, casting out any lingering spiritual influences tied to the circle of divine rebirth. Lazarus, who had been deeply influenced by the occultic group's spiritual ties, required special attention. Reverend Joseph worked closely with Lena and Uncle Victor to sever Lazarus's spiritual connection to the group through intense prayers and guide Lazarus in reclaiming his identity and destiny, and also to protect him from further attempts by the group to reclaim him. The efforts of Lena, Uncle Victor, and Reverend Joseph began to yield fruit, and the unaware family members started experiencing breakthroughs in their lives, improved health, restored relationships, and financial opportunities. Lazarus showed signs of spiritual and emotional healing, becoming more grounded and less influenced by the occultic group's manipulations. as more relatives became aware of the truth. The power of the circle of divine rebirth over the family weakened. Some of the initiated members, including Lena's mother, expressed regret and sought forgiveness, while others, like Caroline, resisted and distanced themselves further. Lena emerged stronger from the ordeal. She became a voice of hope and strength within her family, working to ensure that the cycle of manipulation and spiritual bondage was broken for good. Okay guys, this is the end of our story for today, and I hope this story has just strengthened and installed hope, or a solution to whatever is going in somebody's life, cuz a lot of people are going through a lot without even knowing the root cause of their problem. By the way, this was based on a true story, so I thought I should share. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this story. See you again on our next story with much love from me. Bye.